What happens when we die? I recently posted a video that was discussing a priest when he died, and he realized that he had not lived a life for God, but for himself. Just being in religious life or a priest doesn't mean that you get to heaven. I'm going to tell the story of Howard Storm now. He's probably one of the most famous NDEs, that is near-death experiences, that I've seen, and his stories remain the same for decades. I'm going to weave together a few of his different interviews into a single narrative and retell his story. Howard Storm actually considered converting to the Catholic faith, but unfortunately came across a priest who said, "Oh, if you're Protestant, just stay Protestant," which is sad to me because we should never be content with where we are if we feel that God is calling us to do more. Howard eventually became a Protestant minister and gave his life to Christ. This is Howard's story. Howard Storm was a 38-year-old arts professor, an atheist who believed that life ended with death. He was in Paris in the mid-1980s with his wife and a group of students when suddenly he suffered a catastrophic perforation of his stomach. The pain was unlike anything he had ever known. It was excruciating, like being consumed from the inside. His wife called for help and they were rushed to the hospital. Doctors quickly diagnosed the problem and sent him to a surgical hospital, but in France at the time there was no surgeon available to operate. He needed an immediate operation, and yet the hours ticked by. He lay there in agony, untreated, slipping closer and closer to death. At 8:30 at night, a nurse came in with grim news. The first doctor that would be available to operate wouldn't be there until the morning. Howard realized then that he was out of time. He turned to his wife and told her it was time to say goodbye. She held him, crying, telling him how much she loved him, and he did the same. Knowing death was imminent, he closed his eyes, expecting oblivion. But instead of fading into nothingness, he woke up, standing beside his own hospital bed. He felt more alive than ever, strong and full of energy. His body was still there, lifeless under the sheets. Confused, he tried calling out to his wife, but she didn't respond. He got more and more angry with her. "Why isn't she responding? Are you ignoring me?" Then he noticed that there were others in the room, pale figures standing in the doorway, beckoning him. "Come with us, Howard," they said. "We've been waiting for you." Their voices were soothing at first, persuasive. They seemed to know him, and in his dazed state, he assumed they were part of the hospital staff. But something was wrong. The room he had been in was bright, but the hallway was foggy and gray. Still they urged him on, insisted he follow. As he walked with them, they became more aggressive. Their words turned from coaxing to mocking. They pushed him, prodded him, and as the path darkened, he realized he was no longer in a hospital, but somewhere else entirely, somewhere where there was no light, no direction, and no escape. Then they attacked. What started as shoving escalated into torment. Howard fought back, but they seemed to fight even harder. They clawed at him and bit at him. They tore his flesh. He continued fighting back, but his strikes seemed to have no effect. They laughed as they inflicted pain upon him, and delighted at his suffering. He realized with horror that these were not demons but lost souls, at least that was his impression, beings who had once been like him, completely self-centered and consumed by their own desires. Now they existed only to torment others. Broken and alone and abandoned in the darkness, he lay in agony. Time ceased to have any meaning. He was lost in a void. And after they finally finished with him, left him alone for a while in his complete and utter despair. He knew that this was eternity. Then a memory surfaced, one he had long forgotten. He was thinking about when he went to Sunday school, when he heard a voice say, "Pray." Howard didn't remember how to pray. It had been a long time. He didn't know the words, but the voice urged him on, "Pray." And so Howard tried. He said that he didn't know what to say, but what came to his mouth first was something like, "Jesus loves me, this I know." And this enraged the enemy, whether demon or lost soul, and they screamed at him to stop or they would beat him again. And he kept trying and trying, and strange words like the national anthem became prayers for him, and he just kept going and kept going. It was a plea in the darkness, somewhere between life and eternity. Jesus, save me. At that moment, a pinprick of light appeared in the void. It grew rapidly, brighter than anything Howard had ever seen before. From the light, a presence emerged, a figure of immense love and power. As Howard was lifted into the light, he saw that it was Jesus and knew without any doubt that that is who it was. For a moment, he could see how Jesus saw him. All his sins were hideous within him. Jesus helped the wounds to vanish. They melted away, and Howard was left sobbing, uncontrollably thinking about what had just happened. He said, "I don't deserve this." And Jesus agreed. He didn't deserve this. But Jesus was there for love. He knew he had been wrong. God was real. And Jesus was real. And Jesus had come to comfort him and to give him a second shot, so that his death was not his final judgment, and that he could live and show God that his heart was his, and to accept the grace that God would give him. He was sent back, and for a time, Howard tried to remain a professor, but in atheist academia, it proved too difficult. And last I heard, Howard was a pastor. He may be retired now and had completely and utterly changed his life.